A crimson accent wall energizes a workspace. The soft blue of a bedroom creates a haven of tranquility. The vibrant yellow of a kitchen invites morning optimism. These experiences reflect a profound truth. Color represents far more than mere decoration in our environments. It functions as a powerful psychological force, influencing emotional states, cognitive functioning, physiological responses, and even social interactions through mechanisms both universal and deeply personal. Understanding the multidimensional influence of color allows you to transform it from passive environmental feature into active tool supporting psychological well-being through more conscious application in your surroundings. When you grasp the science behind color's effects alongside its cultural dimensions and personal associations, you gain access to an environmental language that communicates directly to both conscious and unconscious aspects of psychological experience. The science behind color psychology. The relationship between color and psychological state extends far beyond aesthetic preference or cultural convention. Research reveals biological pathways through which color influences neural activity, hormone production, and autonomic nervous system functioning that collectively shape our experience in measurable ways. The perceptual foundation. At its most basic level, color represents our perceptual system's interpretation of different wavelengths within the visible light spectrum. This spectrum spans from approximately 380 nanometers, perceived as violet, to 740 nanometers, perceived as red, with each color corresponding to specific wavelength ranges that our visual system distinguishes through specialized photoreceptors in the retina. This perceptual process begins when light enters the eye and activates different combinations of 3 types of cone cells, each sensitive to different wavelength ranges, roughly corresponding to blue, green, and red portions of the spectrum. These cone cells transform light energy into neural signals that travel through the optic nerve to the brain's visual cortex, where complex processing creates what we experience as color perception. Color information influences many brain regions beyond visual processing areas. Research using neuroimaging technologies confirms these extensive connections. Functional MRI studies demonstrate that exposure to different colors activates distinct brain networks, with warm colors like red and orange increasing activity in regions associated with alertness and emotional arousal, while cooler colors like blue and green enhance activity in areas linked to calm focus and cognitive processing. Physiological responses to color. Beyond neural activation, color exposure triggers measurable physiological responses that directly influence psychological state through what researchers call psychophysiological pathways. Connections between perceptual experience and bodily functioning that create tangible effects on how we feel and function. Studies suggest that exposure to warm colors, particularly red and orange, may increase physiological arousal through effects including slightly elevated heart rate, increased blood pressure, heightened skin conductance, indicating sympathetic nervous system activation, and accelerated respiration compared to neutral or cool-colored environments. These physiological changes collectively create arousal states that influence attention patterns and emotional reactivity. The physiological effects of warm colors likely represent evolutionary adaptations to environmental signals requiring alertness. Associations between red and biologically significant states, including blood, fire, certain poisonous plants, and sexual signaling in primates, may have created selective pressure for physiological responses to these wavelengths, potentially preparing organisms for situations requiring immediate attention. By contrast, cooler colors, particularly blue and green, demonstrate opposing physiological effects, including tendencies toward decreased blood pressure, reduced heart rate, lower skin conductance, and slower respiration patterns associated with parasympathetic nervous system activation. These changes collectively create physiological conditions that may support calm focus, reduced stress reactivity, and enhanced capacity for sustained attention. The relaxation response to blue and green wavelengths likely reflects evolutionary adaptation to environments signaling safety and resource abundance. These colors predominate in resource-rich natural settings with water and vegetation, where heightened vigilance became less necessary and sustained attention to complex but non-threatening tasks conveyed survival advantages. These physiological effects appear to occur regardless of conscious color preferences, operating through automatic pathways that evolved long before cultural or personal associations developed. Some research indicates these responses may exist even in individuals with congenital blindness exposed to different wavelengths through non-visual skin reception, suggesting that certain aspects of color response represent fundamental biology rather than learned associations or aesthetic judgments. Cognitive effects of color. Color influences not just how we feel, but how we think, with research demonstrating relationships between color exposure and specific cognitive performance patterns. These relationships emerge through both direct neurobiological pathways and indirect effects mediated by emotional and physiological responses to different color environments. Studies suggest that red environments may enhance performance on detail-oriented tasks requiring accuracy and careful analysis, with participants showing improved performance on proofreading, error detection, and sequential processing activities in red versus neutral or cool-colored settings. This advantage appears related to narrowed attentional focus that red environments may facilitate through their activation of alertness mechanisms that enhance vigilance. By contrast, blue environments have been found in some studies to enhance performance on creative tasks requiring conceptual thinking, innovative solutions, and making unusual associations. Research suggests greater flexibility in creative problem-solving and higher originality ratings for creative outputs produced in blue versus red or neutral environments. This advantage appears related to explorative cognitive processing that blue environments may support through reduced threat vigilance and enhanced capacity for divergent thinking patterns. Research on green environments suggests they may support balanced cognitive processing that neither overly narrows attention nor excessively broadens it. Some studies indicate that green environments may enhance reading comprehension, learning consolidation, and tasks requiring balanced consideration of both details and broader contexts. These advantages appear related to the state of relaxed alertness that green environments may support through their moderate activation properties. Cultural and individual variations. While biological responses to color demonstrate remarkable consistency across populations, cultural frameworks and individual experiences significantly modify these universal tendencies through what anthropologists call perceptual enculturation, the process through which cultural contexts shape how sensory experiences are interpreted, categorized, and responded to beyond their direct biological effects. Cross-cultural color meanings. Research in cultural anthropology reveals both striking cross-cultural consistencies and significant variations in color meanings and associations, creating what researchers call universal tendencies with cultural modifications that collectively determine color's psychological impact across different populations. Certain core associations demonstrate remarkable consistency across otherwise diverse cultures. Red consistently associates with intensity, importance, and high arousal states, whether positive like love or negative like danger, across nearly all documented cultural traditions. Blue consistently connects with qualities of distance, tranquility, and reliability. Yellow consistently links to energy, attention-capturing properties, and high visibility. These cross-cultural consistencies likely reflect both shared physiological responses and universal environmental associations with these colors. These consistent aspects of color associations likely reflect embodied constants, experiences fundamentally shaped by human biology and shared environmental features transcending cultural differences. Blood appears red universally, creating inevitable associations with life force and danger. Clear skies and deep water appear blue worldwide, creating consistent associations with expansiveness and tranquility. These embodied experiences create a foundation of shared color meanings despite enormous cultural diversity. Alongside these consistencies exist significant cultural variations, particularly regarding symbolic associations, emotional connotations, and contextual appropriateness. White represents purity and positive beginnings in many Western contexts, while signifying mourning and death in several East Asian traditions. Purple carries associations with royalty and spirituality in many Western contexts, but connects with more everyday qualities in cultures where purple dyes weren't historically rare. Green demonstrates positive associations with nature and renewal in many traditions, but carries associations with illness or jealousy in others. Cultural color variations often reflect contingent histories, specific historical circumstances creating associations that become embedded in cultural meaning systems. The association between purple and royalty in European traditions emerged specifically from the extreme expense of purple dye extracted from specific Mediterranean mollusks, creating scarcity that restricted this color to elite usage. Without this specific historical circumstance, purple would likely carry entirely different associations in these cultural contexts. These cultural frameworks influence color psychology through priming effects, unconscious activation of associated concepts that modify how color wavelengths influence psychological state beyond their direct physiological effects. Research demonstrates that individuals from different cultural backgrounds show measurably different emotional and cognitive responses to identical color stimuli when these colors carry different cultural associations, highlighting how learned meanings modify universal tendencies. Individual color relationships. Beyond both biological universals and cultural frameworks, individual experiences create highly personalized color associations that significantly influence psychological responses. These personal relationships develop through what psychologists call emotional conditioning, the process through which colors become linked with specific emotional states based on experiences where these colors featured prominently. Individual color associations form through what learning theorists call evaluative conditioning, neutral stimuli acquiring emotional significance through repeated pairing with positive or negative experiences. The blue of a childhood bedroom associated with safety and comfort. The yellow of a hospital room where difficult news was received. The green of a location where significant achievement occurred. These personal experiences create powerful and highly specific color associations unique to individual life histories. Research suggests that these personal associations can significantly modify or even override both biological tendencies and cultural frameworks. Studies show that individuals may demonstrate unique physiological responses to colors strongly associated with significant personal experiences, sometimes directly contradicting typical response patterns. These idiosyncratic responses highlight the multi-layered nature of color psychology, where universal, cultural, and personal influences continuously interact to create individual color experiences. Individual color relationships also develop through what personality researchers call aesthetic resonance, the tendency for certain color qualities to align with and reinforce aspects of individual temperament and personality. Research suggests correlations between personality traits and color preferences, with extroverted individuals typically demonstrating stronger affinity for high-intensity warm colors, while introverted individuals often prefer cooler or less saturated color palettes that better match their optimal arousal patterns. These individual variations highlight the importance of personal assessment in color applications, rather than rigid adherence to universal prescriptions. While general principles of color psychology provide valuable starting points, thoughtful consideration of personal responses ultimately determines which color environments best support individual psychological well-being across different contexts and purposes. The psychological spectrum. Understanding each color. Each color within the visible spectrum creates distinct psychological effects through combined biological, cultural, and associative pathways. Understanding these specific influences allows more conscious application of color to support particular psychological states and functions within your environments. Red, the color of intensity and action. Red represents the longest wavelength visible to human perception, approximately 625 to 740 nanometers, creating psychological effects characterized by intensity, immediacy, and arousal that influence everything from physiological state to decision-making patterns. This powerful color demands attention through both biological mechanisms and strong cultural associations that collectively make it among the most psychologically active hues. At a physiological level, red exposure may increase sympathetic nervous system activation, your body's action system, through effects potentially including elevated heart rate, increased blood pressure, and heightened skin conductance. These physiological changes create bodily conditions that may support immediate action, which could explain why red environments have been found in some studies to enhance performance on tasks requiring quick responses and short-duration energy expenditure. Cognitively, red environments may enhance performance on detail-oriented tasks requiring careful analysis, while potentially hindering performance on creative tasks requiring broader thinking. Research suggests that people exposed to red backgrounds before cognitive tasks often show better performance on proofreading, error detection, and analytical problem-solving compared to neutral conditions, but sometimes reduced performance on creative association and innovative thinking measures. Emotionally, red appears to amplify whatever emotional state already exists rather than creating specific emotions itself. Research suggests that red environments may intensify both positive and negative emotional responses, making pleasant experiences more exciting and unpleasant experiences more distressing compared to neutral color conditions. This amplification effect explains why red can function effectively in both celebratory contexts, where it enhances positive excitement, and warning applications, where it heightens vigilance. In social contexts, red influences interpersonal perception through nonverbal communication of status, intentions, and qualities. Research consistently demonstrates that people wearing red often receive higher attractiveness ratings, particularly in heterosexual mating contexts, and are sometimes attributed greater dominance and competence in achievement contexts. These effects appear to operate through both evolutionary pathways related to blood oxygenation as a health and dominance signal, and cultural associations with power across many traditions. Given these multidimensional effects, red shows particular psychological benefit in environments supporting brief, focused analytical tasks requiring attention to detail. Environments where physical energy and action orientation benefit activities. Social contexts where increased intensity and engagement serve interaction purposes. Situations requiring immediate attention or creating appropriate urgency. Red demonstrates potential disadvantages in environments supporting extended concentration requiring sustainable attention rather than immediate focus. Activities benefiting from creative thinking and unusual associations. Situations where anxiety or stress already exists and might be amplified. Environments intended for restoration, recovery, or relaxation. The psychological power of red makes it particularly valuable as a strategic accent, rather than dominant environmental color in most contexts. Used selectively for appropriate purposes and in appropriate doses, red provides valuable psychological activation that enhances specific functions. Applied too broadly or in inappropriate contexts, it can create overstimulation that potentially undermines, rather than supports, psychological well-being. Orange, the social enthusiast. Orange occupies the spectral position between red and yellow, approximately 590 to 625 nanometers, creating a psychological profile combining moderate activation properties with strong associations of warmth, sociability, and approachability. This distinctive combination makes orange a particularly effective color for environments supporting positive social interaction, creative collaboration, and enthusiastic engagement. Physiologically, orange appears to create moderate arousal effects, potentially increasing energy without the potentially overwhelming intensity that red sometimes generates. Research suggests that orange environments may produce increases in heart rate and blood pressure compared to neutral conditions, sufficient activation to enhance engagement while avoiding the stronger sympathetic responses that red environments can trigger. Cognitively, orange environments may support what creativity researchers call engaged ideation, the generation of ideas with sufficient energy for expression and development. Studies suggest that orange surroundings can enhance both idea quantity and communicative enthusiasm compared to either neutral environments or more intensely activating red alternatives. This combination makes orange particularly valuable for environments supporting group brainstorming, collaborative problem-solving, and educational engagement. In emotional dimensions, orange consistently associates with warmth, enthusiasm, and approachability across diverse cultural contexts. Research suggests that orange environments may increase reported positive social emotions, reduce social anxiety, and enhance willingness to engage in group activities compared to neutral or cool-colored alternatives. These effects appear to operate through both direct mood influence and activation of associated concepts relating to sociability and warmth. Socially, orange environments may facilitate interaction through environmental cues that reduce interpersonal barriers and encourage engagement. Studies indicate that orange-dominant spaces often correlate with more spontaneous conversation initiation, longer average conversation duration, and higher ratings of interaction satisfaction compared to otherwise identical environments with neutral or cool color schemes. Given these combined effects, orange demonstrates particular psychological benefit in environments supporting collaborative, creative processes requiring both ideation and expression. Social gathering spaces intended to facilitate comfortable interaction. Educational environments benefiting from enthusiastic engagement. Therapeutic contexts where communication barriers need reduction. Orange may prove less beneficial in environments supporting activities requiring deep analytical focus without social components. Tasks benefiting from calm reflection rather than enthusiastic energy. Situations where overstimulation already challenges occupants. Environments intended primarily for restoration or sleep. Orange functions as a social facilitator that reduces psychological barriers to human connection. When thoughtfully applied in appropriate contexts, it creates conditions where interaction feels simultaneously more natural and more energized, supporting the human need for belonging and connection through environmental cues that literally warm the psychological space between individuals. Yellow, the illuminator of mind. Yellow occupies the middle range of the visible spectrum, approximately 565 to 590 nanometers, creating distinctive psychological effects combining high visual prominence with associations of mental clarity, optimism, and alertness. This combination makes yellow particularly effective for environments supporting cognitive processing, learning, and positive outlook despite challenging circumstances. Physiologically, yellow appears to create moderate arousal effects with particular emphasis on mental activation rather than physical preparation for action. Research suggests that yellow environments may increase brain activity in regions associated with cognitive processing and working memory, while creating modest increases in heart rate and blood pressure. Sufficient activation to enhance mental engagement without triggering significant stress responses. Cognitively, yellow environments may enhance performance on tasks requiring logical analysis, verbal processing, and memory recall. Studies suggest that yellow surroundings can improve performance on verbal reasoning tests, enhance memory for written information, and support sustained mental effort compared to neutral or cool-colored alternatives. These effects appear strongest for sequential logical tasks rather than spatially oriented or creative thinking processes. In emotional dimensions, yellow consistently associates with optimism, mental energy, and future orientation across varied cultural frameworks. Research suggests that yellow environments may increase reported positive expectancy about outcomes, enhance confidence in problem-solving abilities, and correlate with reduced pessimistic thinking compared to neutral or cool-colored alternatives. These effects appear strongest when yellow appears as a dominant rather than accent color, suggesting dose-dependent relationships between yellow exposure and optimistic outlook. Perceptually, yellow demonstrates the highest inherent visibility among all colors due to combined high luminance, apparent brightness, and strong contrast against most background conditions. This perceptual prominence explains yellow's effectiveness for attention-directing functions in everything from educational materials to safety applications. It literally captures visual attention through fundamental perceptual mechanisms before any learning or association processes occur. Given these combined effects, yellow demonstrates particular psychological benefit in environments supporting learning activities requiring information, processing and retention, workspaces where analytical thinking and verbal processing predominate, environments benefiting from optimistic psychological orientation, contexts where mental energy and alertness require support without stress activation. Yellow may prove less beneficial in environments supporting activities requiring relaxation, restoration, or stress reduction, tasks benefiting from creative rather than analytical thinking modes, situations where sensory sensitivity or overstimulation already exist, environments intended primarily for physical rather than mental activities. Yellow functions as a cognitive catalyst that enhances mental processing through multiple simultaneous pathways. When appropriately applied in suitable contexts, it creates conditions where thinking feels simultaneously clearer and more energized, supporting intellectual engagement through environmental cues that literally illuminate psychological space. Green, the balancer of mind and body. Green occupies the central position within the visible spectrum, approximately 520 to 565 nanometers, creating a psychological profile characterized by balance, restoration, and harmonization between opposing tendencies. This unique position makes green particularly effective for environments supporting sustainable productivity, stress recovery, and balanced psychological functioning across extended periods. Physiologically, green appears to create what researchers call autonomic equilibrium, balanced activation between sympathetic, arousing, and parasympathetic, calming branches of the nervous system. Studies suggest that green environments may help maintain moderate heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration patterns, while avoiding both excessive activation and exaggerated relaxation responses. This balanced physiological state potentially supports sustainable activity without either understimulation or overstimulation. Cognitively, green environments may enhance what attention researchers call restoration with alertness, the ability to maintain focus over extended periods through balanced attentional support. Studies suggest that green surroundings can reduce attention fatigue during extended cognitive tasks, enhance recovery during brief breaks, and support balanced information processing integrating both details and context compared to other color conditions. Green's cognitive effects appear closely connected to its strong natural associations, with research suggesting that even brief views of green environments may trigger soft fascination, attention engagement that replenishes rather than depletes cognitive resources. This fascination quality potentially allows green to simultaneously hold attention while permitting recovery, creating favorable conditions for sustained cognitive functioning across extended periods. In emotional dimensions, green consistently associates with balance, health, and vitality across diverse cultural contexts. Research suggests that green environments may reduce reported stress, enhance emotional stability during challenging circumstances, and support regulatory capacity, the ability to maintain emotional equilibrium despite fluctuating external conditions. These effects appear related to both evolutionary associations with resource-rich environments and learned connections with growth and renewal processes. Given these combined effects, green demonstrates particular psychological benefit in environments supporting extended work requiring sustainable attention without depletion, activities balancing analytical and creative thinking modes, environments where stress management and recovery need integration with productivity, contexts benefiting from emotional equilibrium during challenging circumstances. Green provides universal benefits with few contraindications, though certain specific applications warrant consideration. Very high saturation greens might create excessive stimulation for highly sensitive individuals. Cultural variations can influence specific green shade associations, requiring context-sensitive application. Particular personal associations might modify green's typically positive effects for specific individuals. Green functions as a psychological stabilizer that enhances sustainable functioning through multiple complementary pathways. When thoughtfully incorporated into environments, it creates conditions where balance feels simultaneously natural and supported, addressing the fundamental human need for settings that permit both productivity and restoration within integrated rather than segregated contexts. Blue, the depth of contemplation. Blue encompasses a range of shorter visible wavelengths, approximately 450–495 nanometers, creating distinctive psychological effects characterized by depth, contemplation, and expanded thinking. This unique profile makes blue particularly effective for environments supporting creative thought, deep reflection, and psychological restoration, requiring mental spaciousness rather than emptiness. Physiologically, blue environments appear to create calming effects through parasympathetic nervous system activation. Your body's rest and digest system, potentially visible in reduced heart rate, lowered blood pressure, slowed respiration, and decreased muscle tension compared to neutral or warm-colored conditions. These physiological changes may create bodily conditions supporting sustained mental activity without physical tension or arousal that might otherwise create distraction. Cognitively, blue environments may enhance performance on tasks requiring creative thinking, conceptual processing, and imagination through what cognitive scientists call expanded associative networks. Studies suggest that blue surroundings can increase performance on creative problem-solving, enhance generation of unusual associations between concepts, and support big-picture thinking compared to red or neutral alternatives. This cognitive expansion appears related to blue's effects on what neuroscientists call default mode network activation, brain regions supporting self-referential thinking, episodic memory, and mental simulation that activate during internally directed rather than externally focused attention. Research suggests that blue environments may enhance appropriate engagement of these networks while maintaining sufficient alertness to prevent mind wandering, creating favorable conditions for purposeful, imaginative thought. In emotional dimensions, blue consistently associates with tranquility, trustworthiness, and contemplative depth across diverse cultural contexts. Research suggests that blue environments may reduce reported anxiety compared to neutral conditions, enhance feelings of psychological safety during vulnerable activities like self-disclosure, and support emotional regulation during potentially stressful circumstances. Temporally, Blue influences perception of time through what chronopsychologists call temporal expansion, the subjective experience of time passing more slowly and spaciously. Studies suggest that people in blue environments typically perceive duration differently compared to red environments where time typically feels accelerated. This temporal effect creates psychological perception of having sufficient time for thorough processing, potentially reducing time pressure stress that might otherwise constrain thinking. Given these combined effects, blue demonstrates particular psychological benefit in environments supporting creative thinking, requiring unusual associations and conceptual breadth. Activities benefiting from emotional regulation and reduced reactivity. Contexts where trust and psychological safety facilitate authentic engagement. Environments intended for contemplation, reflection, and meaning-making. Blue may prove less beneficial in environments supporting activities requiring high physical energy and immediate action, tasks benefiting from heightened alertness to external details, contexts where excessive relaxation might undermine necessary engagement, environments where warmth and immediacy serve primary functional purposes. Blue functions as a psychological expander that enhances mental spaciousness through complementary mechanisms. When thoughtfully integrated into appropriate contexts, it creates conditions where thinking feels simultaneously deeper and broader, supporting the human capacity for imagination, reflection, and meaning-making that distinguishes our cognitive abilities. Indigo and violet, the colors of insight and transformation. Indigo and violet occupy the shortest visible wavelengths, approximately 380 to 450 nanometers, creating psychological effects characterized by contemplation, intuitive understanding, and transformative potential. These distinctive hues make them particularly effective for environments supporting meditation, spiritual practices, and activities requiring depth of insight rather than analytical processing. Physiologically, these colors appear to create complex response patterns combining parasympathetic dominance with selective cortical activation in regions associated with introspection and sensory integration. Research suggests that violet and indigo environments may influence brainwave patterns, potentially increasing alpha and theta wave activity associated with meditative states and creative insight. Cognitively, indigo and violet environments may enhance what psychology researchers call boundary dissolution, reduced separation between conceptual categories that typically remain distinct during ordinary consciousness. Studies suggest that these colors might support performance on insight problems requiring recognition of non-obvious connections, enhance integration of emotional and analytical information, and support pattern recognition in complex information. In emotional dimensions, indigo and violet consistently associate with contemplative depth, inner knowing, and transcendence across spiritual and philosophical traditions worldwide. Research suggests that these environments may enhance reported experiences of meaningfulness, support emotional processing without overwhelming activation, and facilitate what psychologists call psychological coherence, the sense that different aspects of experience form integrated rather than fragmented wholes. Given these combined effects, indigo and violet demonstrate particular psychological benefit in environments supporting meditation and contemplative practices requiring depth without sedation, activities integrating analytical and intuitive cognitive modes, contexts benefiting from enhanced pattern recognition in complex information, environments intended for meaning-making and existential exploration. These colors may prove less appropriate for environments supporting activities requiring heightened external awareness rather than internal focus tasks, benefiting from clear categorical boundaries and sequential processing, contexts where emotional intensity already challenges regulation capacity, environments where practical action orientation serves primary functions. These colors function as integrative facilitators that enhance connections between typically segregated aspects of awareness. When thoughtfully applied in appropriate contexts, they create conditions where understanding can emerge through multiple knowing pathways simultaneously, supporting the human capacity for insight that transcends logical processes alone without abandoning their valuable contributions. Color associations create what symbolism researchers call meaning resonance that significantly amplifies or modifies universal color effects through personal relevance. Colors connected to significant positive experiences, important relationships, cultural heritage, or core values often create psychological benefits extending far beyond their inherent properties through meaning amplification, making personal association understanding essential for creating truly supportive color environments. Color harmony strategies. With deeper understanding of your particular color responses, several evidence-based strategies help create environments supporting psychological well-being through intentional color application. Functional zoning involves what designers call activity-aligned color planning, selecting colors specifically supporting the psychological requirements of different activities, rather than applying uniform color schemes throughout environments regardless of functional needs. This approach recognizes that different activities benefit from different psychological states, that color can either support or hinder through its effects on arousal, attention, and emotional tone. Functional color zoning creates psychological affordance cues that help transition between different mental states appropriate for different activities. Rather than requiring conscious effort to shift psychological gears between activities, appropriately zoned colors provide environmental support for these transitions, reducing adaptation demands through spaces already aligned with their intended psychological functions. Effective zoning typically involves identifying core activity categories within your environments and their particular psychological requirements. Focus zones supporting concentrated attention benefit from colors reducing distraction while maintaining alertness, often moderate blues, specific greens, or certain neutral tones depending on personal response patterns. Creative zones supporting innovative thinking benefit from colors enhancing conceptual flexibility, frequently specific blues, certain purples, or particular teals based on individual creative process requirements. Social zones, supporting comfortable interaction, benefit from colors facilitating warmth and engagement, typically selective oranges, warm neutrals, or specific yellows calibrated to create engagement without overstimulation. Restoration zones, supporting recovery and relaxation, benefit from colors enhancing parasympathetic activation, often specific blues, certain greens, or particular lavenders depending on personal relaxation response patterns. What makes functional zoning effective isn't rigid adherence to universal color prescriptions, but thoughtful alignment between specific activities, their psychological requirements, and your particular color responses. The same activity might benefit from different color support for different individuals based on their unique response patterns, making personal assessment essential for effective application beyond generic recommendations. Temporal calibration recognizes that color needs vary throughout daily and seasonal cycles, requiring what lighting designers call chronologically adaptive color. Environments that either change to match temporal needs or provide different color options supporting different phases. This approach acknowledges both circadian influences on psychological needs and activity pattern variations, creating different color requirements throughout temporal cycles. Temporal color calibration addresses what chronobiologists call state-appropriate environmental support, surroundings aligned with naturally fluctuating psychological needs throughout daily and seasonal rhythms. Morning typically benefits from colors supporting transition to alert engagement, midday from colors supporting sustained productivity without overstimulation, evening from colors facilitating appropriate downregulation, and seasonal patterns create similar, longer cycle variations requiring environmental responsiveness. Implementation approaches range from sophisticated to simple. Dynamic lighting systems that automatically adjust color temperature and characteristics throughout daily cycles, shifting from energizing morning settings through balanced daytime conditions to relaxing evening qualities. Seasonal color modifications through changeable elements like textiles, artwork, or accessories that bring appropriate colors forward during different yearly phases without requiring major environmental changes. Multiple lighting options within spaces, providing different color characteristics, selectable according to current needs, perhaps including both cool spectrum task lighting, supporting focus, and warmer ambient options, enhancing relaxation. Strategic time-based activity, location, utilizing different colored zones at different times according to changing needs, rather than attempting to make single spaces serve contradictory functions. Effective temporal calibration doesn't require complicated technology, but simply thoughtful alignment between changing needs and available options. Even modest implementations like having different colored reading lamps for morning versus evening use, or seasonally rotating certain decor elements, can provide significant psychological benefits through better alignment between environmental qualities and temporal needs. Personal meaning integration involves what environmental psychologists call autobiographical color incorporation, thoughtfully including colors carrying significant personal meaning that provide psychological nourishment through their associative connections, rather than just their inherent properties. This approach recognizes that personal color associations can sometimes transcend or modify universal tendencies through meaning resonance that amplifies psychological effects beyond what color properties alone would create. Meaningful colors create what symbolism researchers call psychological anchoring through connection to important aspects of identity, significant experiences, cultural heritage, or core values. These associations transform colors from merely aesthetic or functional elements into ongoing psychological resources that continuously provide subtle but significant well-being support through meaning activation beyond conscious awareness. Implementation typically involves identifying colors with particularly meaningful associations and thoughtfully incorporating them through accent applications in otherwise neutral environments where they can provide meaning without dominating sensation. Personal objects or images incorporating these colors in ways permitting regular visual connection. Strategic placement in frequently viewed locations creating ongoing but non-intrusive exposure. Thoughtful integration with functional color needs to create both practical and meaningful support simultaneously. Meaning integration proves most effective when incorporated with restraint rather than dominance. Colors carrying strong personal meaning often create their strongest psychological benefits through selective accent application that permits regular exposure without sensory fatigue, allowing their associative benefits to operate continuously without overwhelming other environmental functions. Contrast and balance consideration addresses what vision researchers call perceptual ecology, the relationships between different colors rather than just individual color selections. This approach recognizes that color relationships fundamentally influence overall psychological impact beyond separate color properties through contrast effects, harmonious relationships, and visual weight interactions. Color relationships create what perception researchers call emergent properties that transcend individual color characteristics. Just as musical notes create harmonies or dissonances beyond individual tones, color combinations create psychological effects beyond what their separate properties would predict, requiring attention to relationship patterns alongside individual color selections. Creating personal color harmony. Understanding color's psychological effects provides foundation for creating environments that actively support rather than unconsciously undermine your well-being through more intentional color application. While general principles offer valuable starting points, truly effective color environments require thoughtful integration of universal tendencies, cultural contexts, and personal patterns to create what color psychologists call personalized color harmony. Palettes specifically aligned with your particular needs, preferences, and purposes. Assessing individual color responses. Creating effective personal color environments begins with what color psychologists call color response assessment. Systematic exploration of your particular reactions to different colors beyond abstract preferences or aesthetic opinions. This assessment recognizes that color responses operate through multiple layers simultaneously, requiring attention to physiological, emotional, cognitive, and associative dimensions rather than simple like-dislike evaluations. Effective color assessment involves multi-channel awareness, attention to how colors affect your energy, emotional state, thinking patterns, and associative triggers, rather than merely whether you find them aesthetically pleasing. Someone might aesthetically prefer a color that inadvertently creates physiological activation undermining relaxation, or dislike a color that actually supports cognitive functions important for their activities, making comprehensive assessment essential for effective application. This assessment process typically includes several complementary approaches. Physiological awareness involves noticing bodily responses to different colors through attention to energy levels, tension patterns, breathing quality, and other physical indicators. Simple exposure experiments comparing how different colored environments affect these physiological indicators often reveal surprising patterns unrelated to conscious color preferences, perhaps discovering that an aesthetically pleasing red creates tension, undermining relaxation in bedroom contexts, or that a never-considered teal actually supports sustained energy during work activities. Physiological color responses often operate below conscious awareness until specifically attended to. The body continuously responds to color wavelengths regardless of whether the mind consciously notices these effects, creating situations where environmental colors might undermine well-being intentions despite conscious aesthetic satisfaction. Deliberate attention to these bodily responses reveals valuable information aesthetic evaluation alone might miss. Emotional tracking examines how different colors influence your feeling states through systematic attention to mood shifts, emotional tone, and overall effective quality during color exposure. This tracking often reveals what emotion researchers call color mood contingencies, specific relationships between certain colors and emotional states particular to your personal patterns, rather than reflecting universal tendencies. Emotional color responses reflect complex interactions between universal tendencies, cultural associations, and deeply personal experiences, creating unique emotional signatures for different colors. Someone whose childhood bedroom was yellow might experience comfort and security with this color despite its typical activating properties, while another person might find blue anxiety-producing rather than calming due to specific negative experiences in blue environments, highlighting the importance of personal emotional assessment beyond general principles. Cognitive observation explores how different colors influence your thinking patterns, including focus quality, thinking style, creative capacity, and information processing characteristics. This observation frequently reveals specific color cognition relationships valuable for tailoring environments to support different mental activities, perhaps discovering that certain greens enhance your writing flow, specific blues support your creative thinking, or particular neutral tones facilitate your analytical processing. Association inventory explores personal meanings connected to different colors through examination of significant color memories, cultural influences, and identity connections, creating what psychologists call personal color semiotics, the symbolic language through which colors communicate meaning in your particular experience. This inventory often uncovers powerful associations that significantly modify universal color effects, creating opportunities for intentionally incorporating meaningful colors that provide psychological nourishment through personal significance. Effective relationship management typically involves several complementary considerations. Visual weight balance addresses how different colors attract attention and create perceived heaviness or lightness within environments. Research suggests that high saturation colors, particularly in warm hues, create greater visual weight than equivalent value colors with lower saturation or cooler temperature. This differential weight creates what designers call attentional hierarchy that influences overall psychological experience regardless of specific color identities. Contrast management involves creating appropriate differences between adjacent colors to support both visual functioning and psychological intention. Research suggests that inadequate contrast between functional elements creates what vision scientists call processing strain through insufficient visual differentiation, while excessive contrast between large adjacent surfaces can create overstimulation through harsh transition boundaries that trigger continuous edge detection processes demanding attentional resources. Harmony development addresses what color theorists call relationship coherence, the sense that different colors belong together through underlying organizational principles rather than appearing as disconnected elements. Research suggests that environments with coherent color relationships, whether through consistent temperature ranges, similar saturation levels, complementary positions, or shared undertones, create greater psychological comfort through what perception researchers call processing confirmation that supports efficient environmental understanding. The path of color consciousness, developing what color psychologists call color consciousness, greater awareness of how different colors influence your particular psychological patterns, represents ongoing personal journey rather than one-time learning achievement. This progressive awareness allows increasingly sophisticated color management supporting your specific psychological needs, rather than merely implementing generic recommendations regardless of individual variation. Color consciousness involves developing what psychologists call environmental self-knowledge, understanding your personal response patterns to different environmental conditions through systematic attention to how various colors influence your psychological state. This awareness transforms color from background element taken for granted into actively managed resource, supporting psychological well-being through increasingly refined understanding of your particular sensitivities and needs. As you continue developing this color consciousness, remember that perfect color environments remain impossible given varied needs, practical constraints, and inevitable compromises required in most settings. The realistic goal involves creating best available conditions within existing constraints, while gradually expanding possibilities through education, advocacy, and strategic modifications, allowing color to become active well-being resource rather than unconscious background factor in your psychological experience. The journey toward more psychologically supportive color environments represents not just personal improvement opportunity, but potential collective shift in how we understand and manage one of our most fundamental yet frequently overlooked environmental influences. By recognizing color as essential psychological nutrient rather than merely decorative element, we open possibilities for environments that genuinely support human flourishing through more conscious alignment with our perceptual and psychological needs. Color literally shapes your reality through wavelengths that speak to both conscious and unconscious aspects of your being. When you respond to this conversation with greater awareness and intention, you transform passive color exposure into active psychological nourishment, supporting greater well-being across all dimensions of experience, from your thinking clarity to your emotional tone, from your energy patterns to your sense of meaning. The palette of your life awaits more conscious composition through the remarkable psychological language of color.